Kedar Sharma presents Namaste, I'm Grishma and I welcome you to the Indie Cineglitz channel. Based on the novel Chitralekha, written by noted Indian novelist Bhagwati Charan Verma, the movie is set in the Mauryan period of ancient India, where the city of Patliputra was prosperous and bustling. The movie opens with Beachgupta, one of the senior of Patliputra, who is engaged to a beautiful woman named Yashodhara. He is a popular, valiant youth of the city who has no dearth of wealth and indulges in drinking, sensual pleasures, and the dance of beautiful dancers. He doesn't care about the past or the future and believes in enjoying every moment of the present. Chitralekha is a famous dancer of Patliputra who is a beautiful and charming woman and is adept in the art of dancing. One day, when Chitralekha's grand dance is organized in the royal court, Beachgup is mesmerized by her beauty, becomes fascinated with her, and starts seeing her frequently. Meanwhile, Beachgup's guru Ratnambar sends his two other disciples, Shwetank and Vishaldev, to learn about the sins and virtues of the world. Since Beachgupt is a hedonist, Ratnambar sends Shwetank to him to learn about sins. On the other hand, he sends Vishaldev to an ascetic named Kumargiri who is detached from the world and has conquered all worldly desires. The world is a means to attain heaven for him. Shwetank comes to Beachgupt in Patliputra and Beachgupt, obeying his guru's orders, happily allows him to stay with him. A celibate ascetic Shwetank now lives in Beachgupt's luxurious palace. He feels uneasy in a palace full of beautiful maids. He's trying his best to maintain his asceticism. One day, Beachgupt brings Chitralekha to his house and introduces Shwetank to her. Beachgupt tells her that Shwetank is here in search of sin. Chitralekha advises him to enjoy the fleeting life instead of getting caught in the cycle of sin and virtue. Beachgupt also asserts that death is better than living half-heartedly and one should enjoy life and not waste it in such unnecessary complications. Chitralekha then remembers her past. She tells Beachgupt that life has been unfair to her. She was exploited but still condemned as a characterless woman. Later, when she took refuge at a dancer, she became a dancer who is always looked down upon and seen as a sex object. There was no beauty like Chitralekha in the entire kingdom, but for that, she was called a courtesan who seduces men of noble families with no fault of theirs. She is hurt and turned to alcohol to deal with it. Beachgupt's lust for Chitralekha now turns into sympathy and gradually they both fall in love. In a few days, the news spreads in the city that Chitralekha has taken control of Beachgupt, which upsets Yashodhara, who loves Beachgupt. Seeing this, her father Mrityunjay gets worried and seeks help from ascetic Kumargiri to solve this problem. Kumargiri reassures him and says not to worry, as one of his sharp glances is enough to cure a woman like Chitralekha, and adds that his aura is so powerful that she herself will fall at his feet and ask for forgiveness. He goes to Chitralekha's house, insults her, and says that she is committing a great sin by ruining the life of an innocent girl Yashodhara, for which she will go to the hell. He asks her to break the chains of greed and lust of her hedonistic life and choose the path of dharma to attain peace so that she can earn virtue for heaven. He wants her to free Beachgupt and let him marry Yashodhara. Chitralekha replies that sin and virtue are the stamp of customs in the name of religion, and how can a religion which changes in every era be considered ideal? Also, hedonism is also a form of penance which ascetics like him can never understand, and if we ignore it, it will be an insult to the creation of the same God whom he worships, on which Kumargiri is left speechless. Meanwhile, Beachgupt's chief maid Rambha also writes a letter to Chitralekha in which she condemns her, stating how pure Yashodhara's love and devotion for Beachgupt is, as she prays to God for his happiness, even though she is not part of it. She requests Chitralekha not to take away Yashodhara's happiness and to leave Beachgupt forever. Troubled Chitralekha one day realizes her aging when she finds white hair on her head. She is upset by all these events and remembers Kumargiri's bitter words that one day her beauty and youth will be gone, and hence her welfare lies in renouncing worldly desires and surrendering to God. When Beachgupt comes to see her, she tells him her decision that she is taking up an ascetic life by becoming Kumargiri's disciple. A shocked Beachgupt tries to stop her, but she requests him to let her go and marry Yashodhara. Beachgupt is forced to agree and bids her farewell with a heavy heart. Chitralekha goes to Kumargiri's hermitage and requests him to let her become his disciple and help her atone for her sins. Kumar Giri says that accepting the dancer as a disciple will bring him worldly condemnation and asks her to leave. Chitralekha says that a great ascetic like him should prioritize helping a needy person like her rather than fear worldly censure, and at his behest, she has given up the materialistic world and Bejgupta, so it's his duty to help her. Kumar Giri hesitates to accept a woman his disciple. Chitralekha then tells him that if he claims to have conquered worldly desires, then the fact that she is a woman should not bother him and pleads with him to help. Kumar Giri then agrees to make her his disciple as a test of his knowledge and self-control. Bejgupta is saddened by Chitralekha's departure but decides to marry Yashodhara as per her wish. But in the meantime, Shwetank unknowingly falls in love with Yashodhara and one day informs Bejgupta about his decision to give up his asceticism and marry her. But when he learns that Bejgupta is Yashodhara's would-be groom, he feels ashamed and apologizes to him. He promises to forget Yashodhara forever. Moved by Shwetank's sacrifice, he decides to marry him to Yashodhara. He immediately goes and informs her father, but he refuses as Shwetank is nothing compared to a wealthy senior Bejgupta, and he wants to marry his daughter to a feudal lord of a high family. Bejgupta then declares Shwetank as his heir and gives his title and all property to Shwetank. Yashodhara's father then agrees and Shwetank gets married to Yashodhara. Bejgupta is pleased and blesses both of them. He also decides to become an ascetic and sets out in search of peace. On the other hand, Chitralekha has now adopted the life of an ascetic and is living in Kumar Giri's hermitage with his other disciples. Kumar Giri's wisdom greatly eased the burden of sins on her mind and she devoted herself to serving him as her guru. But Kumar Giri, who considers himself to be the ultimate ascetic and conqueror of desires, is now slowly getting distracted. He is fascinated by Chitralekha's company and beauty. He is attracted to her and all his suppressed desires are now beginning to seep out. His celibacy is shaken and now he dreams of possessing Chitralekha. One night he goes to Chitralekha's hut and expresses his feelings to her. She says that it's a sin for a great ascetic like him to be driven by lust. He shouldn't let his rigorous penance go in vain and insists that she still loves Bejgupta and can't betray him. But gradually she realizes Kumar Giri's pretense and hypocrisy and sees a man full of lust in him. She then decides to return to Bejgupta, but Kumar Giri lies to her that there is no point in going back as Bejgupta is already married to Yashodhara. Chitralekha is shocked and faints. Blinded by lust, Kumar Giri takes her to his hut and tries to molest her. But Kumar Giri's disciple, who had gone to Patliputra, returns and calls him. By then, Chitralekha regains consciousness and runs outside to ask about Bejgupta. The disciple tells her that Bejgupta has bequeathed his property to an ascetic named Shwetank and married him to Yashodhara and has become an ascetic himself. Chitralekha is overjoyed and runs to meet Bejgupta. But when Kumar Giri stops her, she is filled with hatred and curses him to burn in hell for his sins. Kumar Giri finally realizes his mistake and is ashamed. He burns all the scriptures he wrote, breaks his statue and bids farewell to his disciples to atone for his sins. On the way, he gets beaten by a poisonous snake. He dies a painful death and drowns in the sea. Meanwhile, Chitralekha finds Bejgupta and apologizes for hurting his feelings. Bejgupta says that love is nothing but sacrifice and dedication with no crime in it. He forgives her and they are finally reunited. The movie ends here, but in the book, when Shwetank and Vishaldev return to Guru Ratnambar after a year with an account of sins and virtues, they narrate their experiences to him. Ratnambar preaches that a human is an emotional creature, a slave to his circumstances. He may try his best to hide behind the mask of religion and rites, but he can't stay away from natural laws for long. Everyone desires happiness, but its definition is different for every person. Similarly, the definitions of sin and virtue also keep changing according to our circumstances in every era. Kumar Giri considered penance to be a virtue, while Bejgupta considered suppression of desires to be a sin. But at the end of the movie, the same hedonistic Bejgupta got a happy ending with his selfless sacrifice, and the lust and ego of the ascetic Kumar Giri led him to a painful death. Therefore, sin and virtue in the world depend on your perspective, and it's your conscience that decides what is right and what is wrong.
So this was our favorite movie of the day. Do tell us your opinion in the comment section. And don't forget to like, share and subscribe our channel. Take care.